how you doing, everybody? This is Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor. I have a good friend of mine, Eddie Austin, here today. I have him on my podcast because we had a great conversation on his podcast about mindset and thoughts and everything, and I really wanted to have him back. How you doing today, Eddie?
Man, it's been amazing. You know, just the amount of time that we just spend together is just a blessing, because all the mindset, when I think about that, how many people could we help from just listening to this podcast? You know, and that's where I'm at. You know, I love what I do. Everything I do is for a purpose. It's an inspiration to others. And I just love sharing time with a person like yourself. And thank you for doing this and having a platform that we could talk openly.
I really appreciate you being on here, and just tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what your focus is.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm in the help business. Real estate is my game. We raise equity to do build to rent communities development, develop properties into site-ready pads for national home builders. But I'm in the help business in this aspect that I deliver homes for people to live in, at the same time giving people passive income returns that they normally wouldn't access, like private equity. But the bigger thing to that is I absolutely love helping other people. So I love being a mentor. I'm a fund manager. Just launched the Game Changer community, which is a very low cost per month. And all it is to help people get to a different place in life. I want to help the MVPs, which in my opinion is the most vulnerable people.
Oh, that's great. It's one of those things where, you know, the more good you do, it's contagious. You know, they say misery loves company, but I think positive vibration and being good, somebody could be having a really bad day. And I've those times where I've had a bad day and I'm walking and somebody, like it was the other day, I was thinking about so many different things when I first got to the boat. There's all these things going on the boat and at home and everything. And I was walking by to go to the gym. It was about 5:30 in the morning. And the security lady, she said, "Hey, good morning, sir. How you doing?" And I said, and I stopped and I looked and I said, "You know, I'm doing pretty good." You know, and I stopped to talk to her, and it made my day. And then, you know, it was just little things like that you don't realize that they could actually lift somebody up.
You know, I've had that exact same thing where I was that person, you know, and I was flying back from Dallas one time and I was just reading a book, and then I listened to a podcast a little bit that I downloaded on my phone, and the woman sitting next to me just looked over and she put her hand on my arm and she said, "I just want to thank you for being so calm and reassuring to sit next to, because the world's so crazy sometimes and it just seems like you've got it all together." And I said, "Well," I said, "I really appreciate that." I said, "Because, you know, honestly, things are kind of crazy right now for me in business. And there's so many different things we're learning as a company and, you know, ways to do business in today's environment and ways to help people." And I said, "I guess I'm really thankful that I could pass that to you and feel like I had this calming effect." So we talked for a little while, and by the end of it, she asked that if she could, you know, have my contact information or where to follow me or something like that, because she felt like I was a breath of fresh air.
Oh, nice.
And she had looked on, she got on the Wi-Fi and she looked at my Facebook profile and she's like, "So you do a lot of motivational stuff?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. I post motivational stuff all the time." And when I said, "Yes, ma'am," she goes, "Oh my gosh, somebody that's actually polite. That's another good trait," you know, and, you know, just things like that, just like somebody saying good morning to you. Some of that stuff's gone. And it's surprising.
Well, I wouldn't say it's gone. It's just, we're bringing it back.
We're bringing it back. Exactly. Yeah. It's just, people have gotten so busy that they just don't think about the polite things of holding the door for somebody.
Yeah.
You know, they're thinking about that next meeting. When they come flying out of the coffee shop, they're already running late. Like they're already trying to join the next Zoom meeting and not even thinking about the old person that's getting ready to walk in that would have gave anything for somebody to hold the door for them.
Yeah, or you know, it's a struggle for them to even open the door.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's a big deal for them to, you know, be able to open the door, and it's a big deal for someone to open the door for them.
Yes.
As in times gone by, that's the way I was raised. That, you know, the elder is, you know, that's your senior. So that's a huge level of respect, you know, and that's, you know, it's, you know, they did all those things for us. Now it's our time.
Yeah. You know, it's just it's so special to live in the day's world and have the confirmation sometimes that we are making an impact. Like I do everything I do on my social media, not to just attract money for the things that we
Yeah.
do in real estate, but to make an impact,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love it when it really seems like people have a hard time with publicly saying thank you anymore.
Yeah.
So I've had people that like private message me and they said, man, you don't know how much I needed to hear what you posted today. And it
Yeah.
felt like you knew that I was struggling and I needed to hear it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it seems like right now it's gone the other way where we want to publicly humiliate or publicly knock somebody down, but privately we'll say thank you. But it used to be the other way, and the way I do on the boat is that it's tried and true method of leadership is, you praise in public and, you reprimand in private.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things that, you don't want that person you want to build that person up because that's your team member. You're dependent on them. And especially with us at sea, like anything can happen and we need each other.
Sure.
Just because I'm the captain, I can go down in a fire or a flood just like anybody else.
Sure.
We all need to lift each other up and pull each other out. Not to say that's a day-to-day, but those things happen. And because anything is possible, but if we're all pulling together, there's a higher chance of us all succeeding and all of us all surviving. And one also, if we all get along, we're probably going to have a great time. And that's kind of what it's all about. Is what I found these days is that people take themselves way too seriously, or they're just too stuck in what they're doing. And somehow it's very internal, but they're mostly focusing on external things. It's not really, they're not working on themselves, but they're focusing on these external things that are really probably not issues if they really just took a step back and looked at what's actually going on with themselves. Like, oh, this is this. It's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. It's not life threatening. We have this saying on the boat, if it's not life threatening, there's no reason for you to get upset. We'll find a solution.
100%, man. That ought to be wrote everywhere because it's so important. Everybody sweats the small stuff. And, I always tell, when I was raising my kids, I'm like, kids, don't fight every battle. You'll wear yourself out down to the point that when you have to fight a real battle, you're tired and you don't have the resources because you exerted yourself on every small thing that you thought was important that is not.
That's interesting that you say that because I just read this book, A Changed Mind by David Bayer. And I follow a lot of his stuff too, and I found a lot of those things to resonate with me because it goes along with a lot of these other books that I've read and things I've studied. That if you put it out there, it's there. But what you have to do instead of just getting stressed out and full force at it, just relax and kind of do the things that you're supposed to be doing. Don't get stressed out about it, and it'll come a lot quicker than you think. And I found that to be true with a lot of things, because it creates when you're relaxed and you're of a clear mind, things come to you a lot easier. Ideas, creativity.
Of course.
Whereas if you're stressed, you have a tendency to get that tunnel vision.
Yes.
And then you can't see beyond it. And it happens more times than not. If you've been looking at a problem, somebody else comes along and is like, hey, why don't you just do this? And then they finish it in like 2 seconds. You've been struggling with it for weeks.
Yeah, of course. I've been blessed to manage some very large teams over my career in maintenance and in solar and all types of industries. And I've always been a person that ended up in that leadership role. I guess it's just my MO. It's my makeup, as I always, find I'm a very valuable person to the aspect that I need to be in that leadership role because I'm a leader.
Yeah.
And I've always had ice in my veins when it comes to that stuff. And when it comes to problems, I've always been able to problem solve by nobody's business, just simply because I just don't get excited about that kind of stuff. And when there's a problem, I'm like the same as you. Like, look, if it's life or death, we'll move a little quicker. But let's think about this. Let's problem solve. Let's figure it out. There's always a solution.
Yeah.
And it's just having that ice in my veins. I've always been that cooling effect to everybody else that just calms the chaos. It's like, don't get excited. It's going to be fine.
It's the de-escalation gene, I guess. It's because it's, even if it is life or death, we still have to follow, we still have to be calm. If we go to full-blown panic, we've already lost. We're not going to get that person to where they need or the help that they need or what needs to happen. We just we just take a step back and detach for a second, or if it's even a second, that's all it takes for you to go, okay, this, and you go down the line.
Yeah.
What does everybody need to do? And it's very important that you just remain calm. Icing your veins is a great trait to have, especially for leadership, because you don't want to be cold-hearted, but you want to be cold-minded, where you can see. Because I've said many times, like when I've had issues on the boat or in my life, people are saying, how are you not freaking out right now? I said, because what help would I be to everyone around here if I was freaking out?
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't get out of this.
So in my free time, I like to fly privately. And when I was learning to be a private pilot, going through my pilot training, I had a really, really good flight instructor, a couple of them.
Yes.
And the saying goes, slow is fast. And complacency kills. So you're never complacent. You're always aware of the surroundings, but slow is fast. And also, if you have a bunch of people on board that don't have the skills and education you have about what's going to happen, when the engine goes out, it's not an emergency.
No,
like you still have wings, you still got air underneath of you, got airspeed. It's not a big deal. So the first thing you do is like, all right, you check the engine, you check your gauges, you check your fuel, you grab your checklist, you try the engine a couple times, and then you're looking for a place to land. It is not an emergency.
No.
Like, just find a place to land and put it down. It's no big deal. Hey, couple souls on board. Mayday, mayday.
Yeah.
We're coming in. This is my last known location.
We're landing on Highway 129.
Right.
We're eastbound. We're eastbound. We're gonna put it down. It's funny you mentioned that, because I did my pilot license in the 90s. I haven't flown since, and I planned on getting into aviation, but the bottom dropped out of the whole thing. A lot of my friends were getting furloughed and everything else, and I got into IT, and they kind of told me, like, look, we got 10 years experience, and you're just coming out. You got to think hard if you want to spend the money to go through and do your commercial, because that's going to cost you X amount more. And luckily I got into IT, and that ended up being more. I got more into that, but I always loved flying, and I loved the boats and everything else too, because there's a lot of similarities. It's the same mentality. What looks like an emergency to other people, or they might think it's an emergency, it really isn't. Like a lot of times on the boats, like we got to come in through some tight areas and stuff like that, and they're like, people will say to me afterwards, like, oh man, that was really tight, and this and that, and like sometimes I have to think back, not to say it's like, yeah, I guess it was, and then I start to think, never really thought about that. Is because it's one of those things that really an old timer captain said to me a long time ago. It's all in the approach. So same thing in aviation. It's all in the approach. Like in your head, you already have it in there. So then all you have to do is just follow that muscle memory, follow that guidance, because you already have it. But once you start to second guess yourself, you're lost. You're not sticking to the plan. You're doing all those things that are detracting to, and that's similar with a lot of business things in life. Like, if you stick to the plan, it may take longer, but it'll get there if you just keep doing the steps, keep doing the things that you need to do. Because if you don't, and you start second guessing yourself, you might stop. You might lose all that momentum. It's the same thing. You're on the boat, you're going into the dock, you lose momentum, the current, the wind, everything might take you. Same thing with the airplane. If you don't come in at that same speed and have the rudder in the right position for that crosswind, you might not put it down okay. And then all the people on the plane or on the boat are dependent on you to get it right and do those things correctly. So you really, it's something to be said about thinking things through and having the approach already in your head.
It builds on experience. I know, like, one time I was a young boy, but I remember it like it was yesterday. We were coming into Monterey Marine in Stewart, and my dad was backing in the slip with a 63-foot sports fish, Lydia. It had 3 8V92 Detroits. He always used the 2 outside engines. He would turn around backwards on the fly bridge and run it in, and the current was coming through the canal a little bit that day, and there was a super nice, beautiful white and blue and black boat, kind of similar trailer behind you, probably at least a 50 or 60 meter, and just a beautiful yacht. And the current caught the bow of Dad's boat, and he completely put it in neutral and put his hands up in the air, and ended up just bumping right into that boat and punching a hole in the side of it. Just barely creased. It was Kevlar. Now, my dad was a boat builder, so he was able to fix it. But I asked Dad, I said, Dad, why didn't you just gas it forward, or why didn't you, all the different things? And he said, son, sometimes it's not best to fight Mother Nature. If the boat was going that way, the best thing to do is just turn it loose and just let it go. And he said, yeah, I probably could have just threw it full forward, but all that thrust would have threw that man's boat right into the seawall, and it could have turned out a lot worse or hurt somebody. So it was just so cool. And then the really cool part of that story was the guy come out, super nice. He had a Saints shirt on. He owned the Saints. He was the football team owner.
Oh, I think I know.
So you'd have to ask him about the Blue Marlin backing into his boat and Stewart Marine.
I had a friend that worked for the owner for quite some time. Maybe it was prior, or maybe it was at that time. But we had a saying. The first captain I worked for, he said, "Look, if we're coming in and the current's really hot and we can't make it, if I put my hands up and say committed, you don't do anything. If it's gonna hit, let it hit. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But it's better we do it slow. Same thing like slow is fast. You're saying in aviation, we say slow is pro.
Yeah.
The guy that comes in nice and easy and nothing happens. Whereas you get some of these hotshot guys that come in really fast. They come in fast and they do it well. They do it really well. But if they miss one time, it goes bad in a hurry.
Oh yeah.
There's something to be said about that slow is fast and slow is pro. But it's by making a really aggressive move at that point, you could put yourself into a really bad way along with other people around you. And that's one of those things where sometimes you just have to stop, because the same captain, I was docking the boat, and it was a 70-foot hatteras, and I was a mate, and I thought I was doing pretty good at the time, and he was letting me dock the boat, and we're coming into Marathon, and I'm coming in, and he's like, man, you're coming in way too fast, and then I started doing a lot of this, I started overthinking it and second guessing myself, and my hands were moving faster than my head, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna hit there, and he's like, stop, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna hit, and he's like, well, what do you need to do to get out of it? So, well, I need to go starboard reverse. He said, well, do that. Yeah. And I did that, and it went right alongside the dock, and I was like, huh. Yeah. I was like, huh. And he said, that just goes to show you what you need to do a lot of times. If you're frazzled or you're not sure, just stop. Take the time to think it through. If there's not a solution at that moment, maybe that's all you can do, but maybe it'll come to you in a little bit, or maybe that's all you need. Because if you're going to hit, you're going to hit. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. We weren't going that fast. So he said the boat was slowing down. So, it's just, it's interesting how much you can learn from those situations that apply to all these things, because when I love aviation, boats and stuff like that, there's a lot of things that transfer into business and stuff. And
of course it does.
It's all people, and it's all processes and stuff that you really need to continue to work on, because we all make decisions and make mistakes. We just don't want to make the same ones continually.
Right. Yeah. 100%, man. Often we compare ourselves to problems too. And I really like the saying by John Pennington, compared to what? You think your situation's bad. What are you comparing it to? Same thing in life. Often we get a little complacent. We get to thinking bad about ourselves or other things. And then when you think about it, your situation could probably be a lot worse if you really think about that in perspective compared to what?
Yeah. I mean, it's all relative. Some people have things worse than others everywhere. All that's relative. But like you said, compared to what? If you really think about it, you say, well, my life's terrible right now. Like, well, not compared to somebody else in a lot of other countries where they don't, maybe they don't have something to eat. They don't have a roof over their head. They don't have
clean water.
Yeah, they don't have clean water. I was thinking the other day, I was sitting there early in the morning, how amazing that is when you just cut the tap on and you get fresh, clean water. Yeah. It's like 75-80% of the world doesn't necessarily have that.
Yeah.
And a large percentage of those people have to walk miles to bail water.
Yeah, like the mission wells that people's
Yeah.
put in for them.
Yeah, and and I remember I was a kid in Jamaica, and I remember I was asking my dad, I was like, well, what are these people carrying those jugs of water for? I was like, well, they have to go bail the water from the river and then carry it back to their house. And they might walk a couple miles to get to the river.
Yeah.
They do that every day. So
It's incredible, man.
it's one of those things where, you have to be really grateful for all the things that we have around us. It's a very exciting time, as we were discussing earlier, very exciting time to live, and to really count your blessings with. Like, I'm here in the Bahamas. You're in Texas. You're right now?
Right now, I'm back in Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Indiana, and we're talking like we're right next to each other.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
It's awesome, man. It's so cool.
And we're talking about, all these great positive things happening. We just have to really take a step back and feel how grateful we are about the opportunities that we have, and just take advantage of them and share them with other people, because, other people may not have that in their life. They might not, that might be the one thing that somebody needs that day.
Right. Well, one of the things that I really lean in on is I do everything I do, and I do a lot, but I really stretch myself because I want to be an inspiration to the guy that knew me before, to know that I'm just an everyday guy. I'm the same guy as anybody else that started from nothing to get where I am today. And I do everything I do to inspire someone else to believe that they can. Because sometimes, and I'm also that advocate that says, Scott, I believe in you. Everything that you're set out to do, I believe in you, because somebody believed in me, and I started believing in myself, and that's where I've got today, because there was somebody there. And I want to be that somebody to other people, and I want to be that roadmap for other people.
It's funny. I guess this is why we talk very well, is because before I got into real estate and stuff like that, and commercial syndications and stuff like that, I didn't know that those opportunities existed. So, it's one of my missions is to make sure that people know that these options and opportunities are available to them, and not just what I'm doing, but just that, hey, if I'm out there taking a swing at it, think of all the things that you can take a swing at. And that's
exactly.
I think of my kids and stuff like that. Like, I don't want them to ever say, oh, I can't do that. Well, you obviously can't, because you just told yourself you can't.
Man, that hits home. Man, I was raised in a household with a tough hand, and I can't didn't go over well. And Dad never ever said, allowed me to say I can't, because he wouldn't even let it slip.
No.
And I'm proud of that, because just like Henry Ford, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. You're 100% right. And man, your mind is so vulnerable to the things that come out of this mouth right here. Because that mouth is a rudder, and that rudder has the ability to steer big ships in incredible directions. Same as your life. And when you let words come out of your mouth like, I can't do that, you don't have any idea how and that impact can be on the subconscious mind.
Well, it's already decided by you saying that, because your thoughts become your beliefs become your choices are actions, and your actions are your life, actions or inaction. If you decide, and there's that saying that, people mostly regret at the end of their life the things that they didn't do, not the things that they did do, and it's very important to me that, hey, my wife and my kids and stuff, like, even if something didn't go so well, let's say, hey, the old man took a swing at it.
Right. I want to dive in on those subjects, two separate ones. The first one is my 17-year-old daughter yesterday was telling me and my wife, she's like, I get these thoughts sometimes, and I'm not sure whether I should do them or not, like business ideas and some other things. I was like, kid, actually my wife said it first, that's like a lightning bolt thought that was only given to you. And some of those things, you got to pursue them. And I said, kid, probably never heard the story, but those are like your own Jiminy Crickets. And one of these days, they may come to haunt you at your deathbed, because they might come back and say, I was a dream, I was a vision, I was given to you, and only you could bring it to fruition. Only you could bring it to the reality of life. And you didn't do that. And then I had the ability to sit down with a gentleman that's running an amazing nonprofit yesterday, and he's running this Rooted in Recovery, and I was mentoring him as a CEO. And I said, indecision is a decision. Procrastination is the number one thief of anything you're going to do. You have to move, whether you're making the right move or the wrong move, you have to make a swing at it. So I said, so if you decide to not do anything, you still made a decision, and that was the wrong one. Now, in a situation like take your hands off the controls and let the boat go, that's a little bit different.
That's a decision. well, you are taking an action because
Right.
you're hands off.
Right.
It is a decision.
Yeah, Jesus, take the wheel. I don't
Yeah,
know what's next.
yeah,
Right.
that's it's funny because I had this conversation, and I've had this many times that, like, and I've said something to my family or people I know, like, hey, I'm doing this, and they're like, that's a crazy idea. There's no way that'll work, or this and that. And I always say to them, it's like everything around us was a crazy idea at one point.
But let me put it my wife's perspective. My wife says, really, we were sitting in this great big syndication meeting in Miami, Florida, with some partners down and fund launch, and
Okay.
we're talking about these crazy ideas, and they were saying the exact same thing, how crazy that my idea was. And my wife says, let's put that in perspective on compared to what for a minute.
Yeah.
You realize that we're on this huge rock that is hurling through space right now? I don't think we can get much crazier than that.
Yeah. That's so true. And there was a comedian, Louis C.K. He was saying, like, how long does it take for us to get complacent or tainted? When the Wi-Fi just first came onto the plane, and he's sitting there like 30 minutes. They're like, oh, this is amazing. They're emailing, people all over the world, and they're watching videos and everything. And then it stops working, and the guy next to him goes, oh, this is bullshit. Oh my God, this is terrible. This and that. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm sitting on a chair in the sky, flying coast to coast from New York to LA. It takes 4 hours. It used to take 2 years. There'd be about 30 of us. Some people would get born. Some of them would die. It'd be a totally different party when we got there.
That's so true. Yeah, it's so true.
Like coast to coast, you're sitting there and you're talking to anybody, anywhere. Like, how amazing is that? It's just, everything was a crazy idea at some point.
It was, man, everything.
Running water, all the stuff around us, but somebody had to come up with it.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of great ideas on the shelf, but the things that made it happen were the people that took the action.
It takes the people like Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Steve Jobs, to change the landscape for the betterment of our lives. Yeah. And often us big visionaries like ourselves get so condemned about speaking publicly. All we're doing is speaking our ideas into existence. And we just have to shut down the noise of the negativity, because it could take somebody's one big crazy idea that could change the world for the better forever.
Well, you think about even like somebody like Gandhi, where he had the civil disobedience, where it was change through nonviolence. He brought the most powerful empire of the world at that time to their knees.
Yeah. One man.
Idea. And that's a very powerful thing when you think that, someone that has that conviction, that could be any one of us.
It could. Really could.
You never know where it's going to come or when it's going to come. But everyone has that. What I tell people is that everyone has that potential. It's just how we tap into it, or how any of these things are possible if we just believe that those are the things that we need. If you have conviction and you don't procrastinate, and you execute and you take action, at least you took a shot at it. It would be terrible for me to be sitting here 20, 30, 40 years from now on my deathbed and sitting there like, oh, well, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
The difference between the guy that changed everything and the guy that didn't is one was afraid to fail as much as the guy that took the shot and just swung at it. Because I'll fail 1,000 times just trying to make it once, because that one time could change the whole spectrum.
And sometimes even the failure is the one that
oh man, I've learned nothing from winning. I mean nothing. I mean, I was a guy, winning actually got me in a really bad place at one point, because I was just that guy that just fall in crap and smell like a bed of roses. And I just won, man. Everything was just on my side.
Yeah.
And I started this, this company that was a metal fabrication company, a custom fabrication shop for hot rods. And we were just killing it. Like everything we just touched turned to gold. And I just got so used to winning that I wasn't good at taking the L's. And I had forgot the real resilience of myself. Like the reason that I was so good at what I did is because I was okay with sucking for so long. Just showing up every single day, just resilient, man. Just keep showing showing up no matter what.
Yeah.
And nothing got me down. And then when I could not win anymore because I was going the wrong direction, and God's like, no, like you're not supposed to be this guy anymore. And I couldn't get those W's. I never learned from that. What I learned was when the failures started coming and I started extrapolating all those failures, I'm like, man, I learned a lot more from falling on my face than I did ever just coming easy on a win.
I think we had this conversation before when, the only thing that I would really want to happen when I was younger, the 20-year-old me or whatever, is I wish I would have failed faster or at least took more swings earlier rather than being afraid to try, talking myself out of all these things that probably would have been amazing. At the same time, it was my path that I had to go through and make those poor decisions or not make a decision, which usually in my life, the things that gave me the most problems were not making the decision.
100%. That's so true, man. My friends sometimes, they've gotten used to it now because they've been around me a long time, but I got some friends like, dude, that Eddie Austin guy, man, he's crazy. Like that guy will be sitting here at dinner talking about some company and he started it next week. Like he just started it. And then one of my buddies come back and they're like, dude, don't you get bogged down by everything you do? And I said, really it's who, not how. So I'm always starting something because I'm the visionary. So I got to get it to a place that somebody else can believe in it and see it. Yeah. But I'm not a one-entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. When I come up with a good idea and it can be profitable, do it. Until it fails, do it. And then figure out, okay, this is not something that can be survivable. It's not worthwhile because of these fail points. But I vetted the process.
Yeah, and you find the great point is that, and takeaway from me is that I found the who, so you pass it on to the who's are running it, and they understand the vision, they understand the process. And not to say there's not any check-ins and follow-throughs on your part, because you have to continue, and what the vision is when it starts is probably completely different 6 months, a year, 5 years. It's in an evolution of things and processes all the time. That's one of those things where you have to find the who that's ready to grow and ready to respond, and you give them a vested interest in the project, and then they're going to take it and run with it. And that's
I've had to teach a lot of people on this. There's no such thing as a perfect close-ended business plan.
No.
Whoever thinks it's perfect on the first round, go ahead and leave the room, because this is going to evolve quite a bit. And if we think that closed-minded, we're as closed as this business is going to be in the future.
Well, and it will be closed very soon.
Yeah, it has to. Business plans evolve, things change. You have to be able to morph, move, and shoot, and you have to be adaptable. This is a crazy time.
Think how many times you've made revisions with your own life.
Oh my gosh, man. Like from where I started, I don't remember who said it. You've read a lot of books the same as I have. It's eluding me right now, but you have to try a bunch of small things. You have to try a bunch of things when you first start out, like getting a job, because you got to figure out what you're really passionate about. Yeah. So you need to go out and just I think it was Warren Buffett. Like you just need to go out and do a bunch of things until you figure out what you're good at, that comes natural, and then figure out how to get paid for it. But don't start out by going into it on, I'm going to do this because it makes $500,000 a year. Yeah. Don't do that. Like find out what you're good at.
You're going to probably hate it.
Yeah, you will. You really will. Some of the things that I made a tremendous amount of money at, like I was an electrician, man, and a welder, a diesel mechanic. I made a lot of money at that stuff. Yeah. But man, it beat my hands up. I got shocked a bunch of times. I've cheated death. I can't tell you how many times.
Yeah.
And it's, it's not passion. I had fun. Yeah. I was good being a rock star, but it's not, you don't live a long time.
Similar background. Like we did a lot of heavy equipment trucking stuff, Jamaica.
Yeah.
We had trash business and stuff. And I grew up in it and was good at it. And I could have gotten a lot of things, done a lot of things with it. But it ended up being a good background, engineering background for all the yachts and stuff and airplanes and built cars and stuff similar like that with you. But it wasn't my passion. I might do some projects at home, like fix up a car or whatever, just because it was like relaxing to me. And it brought back times like with the old man and my brother and stuff, and we were doing stuff. But like to do it for work, I was like, I knew that wasn't because then you got people, customers, you got people saying that we got deadlines and everything, and then it's like you gotta get it done. That's not the because it
sucks the fun right out of it.
Yeah, and it's wrong because like people, I love sailing, and like people would
Yeah.
say, hey, why don't you work on a sailboat? And it's like, well, it probably wouldn't be any fun for me anymore.
Nope.
You know, but when I go like with friends of mine that are sailboat captains or something like that, I go on a delivery, I get to do the fun part. You know, I don't have all the responsibility and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get to do that part. Granted, I help everybody get here safely and stuff. And you know, and I go on other powerboat deliveries and stuff, whereas that, and it's just with people I know, like, and trust. So it's kind of fun for me, because it's not really like to them, it's work, and I'm there helping out. And all I'm really doing is just helping the process. Something that I'm passionate about. I love doing. I love being on the water. You know,
I do too, man. I miss it.
Bad day on the water is a great day for me. Like, you know, the like I said to young man that was working, we were working together a few years ago, and he was a great guy. Loved working with him. He was ex-Marine and stuff, and like the weather was really bad. We were in the Caribbean and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, Cap, what do we do now?" And I was like, "We don't do anything." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Man, the weather's really bad." And I said, "Look, son, all we gotta do is get there.
Yeah.
All we gotta do is get there.
That's
Nothing
so
else
true.
matters. Nothing else matters. And we got to make sure everybody on the boat is safe, and we all get there. That's all that matters." And then he was like, it was the same thing like you were talking about icing your veins, but like for me, I was like, time of my life, the weather, you know, weather bad or
That's
whatever.
the most fun you had in a while.
I didn't care, but I was standing outside on the wing there, and I got doused a couple of times, and I was like, well, you know, it's not that bad.
Right. I know my dad, you know, when I was growing up, Dad was a boat builder. We always went to the Bahamas. We went to the Keys. We built all kinds of boats, all different types, you know, sizes and engine types and everything. And we were going out one time fishing, and we got caught in a pretty good storm. And I wasn't nervous a bit. And he put down his hand and he said, "Son, I'm proud of you for being open-minded during this time, because this is where you learn something. You'll learn nothing in a smooth sea.
Yep.
Rough seas will teach you more than any smooth sea ever will."
It's so very true. And the same thing, like life's issues, problems, and failures, that will teach you everything that you need to know. And like you said, you know, it's a learning moment. It's something that you need to learn, and it's you know, the higher power is giving you some guidance there.
Yeah, I like this one.
At that moment,
don't shake your fist at the wind. Build a better sailboat.
It goes back to what you were saying. Like, you're not going to beat Mother Nature, because we are nature.
Yeah.
We can't beat ourselves, and you know, we're a part of all this. And so, you know, we're not going to try as we must. Our idea of winning is not really winning.
No, not a bit. Man, I tell you, it's this life is so beautiful, and you know, there's sometimes we just have to remember that there is some ugly people that can take the fun out of it.
Yeah.
You just have to remove yourself from those equations.
Most definitely.
And then I met a guy at a place. He was a world traveler, been over 300 countries.
Wow.
And he told me, he said, "Eddie, this life is beautiful. It's the people that make it ugly." And I said, "Yes, but you have a choice on who you spend time with." And he goes, "That right there."
Yeah, that is so very true, because we get all consumed sometimes with that one bad person, but why not focus on that one person that made it great for you, you know, or you know, 'cause our minds have a tendency to go to what's the worst thing that could happen.
Oh,
you
of
know?
course, yeah.
And
Pre-programmed.
I've been focusing my brain on like, what's the best thing that could happen out of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, they
Over and
say
over.
that a negative person transfers 40% to you within, I think, 10 or 15 feet of that person, if you're next to that person.
Really?
But only 10% of positive vibes get transferred when you're in 10 to 13 feet of that person. So that tells me that I need to be around 4 people all the time that are positive, just to beat the one negative guy in the crowd.
Yeah. So I need 4 times as many positive people.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on it.
That's right. Sorry, I got to move about 13 feet away from you, buddy.
Yeah, sorry. 13 feet. You know, I'll be walking around with that tape measure.
Yeah.
14 just to be safe.
Yeah.
I like my buffer.
Right. Yeah. You don't, you know, just like, I think it was a Nelson Mandela quote, "Don't walk through my mind with your dirty feet."
Oh, yeah. That's very good.
And I had to tell a contractor today, had a tough conversation. We're doing some renovations on one of our Dallas deals, multifamily. And, you know, this contractor's done a decent job, but he's got a lot of things things going on with some other things going. And with that, he was having some tough times, and I finally had this to stop the conversation. Anybody that has not read the book, Never Split the Difference, if you're in this business, you have to read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. Those negotiating skills will help a lot. But I stopped and turned that conversation around, and then I said this. I said, look, I'm sorry that someone else cut you, but that wasn't me, so don't bleed on me.
Yeah.
I wasn't the one that cut you, so don't bleed on me.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic, because they so often, I've had also in my boat career a lot of times where the last guy before me, they've gone through, the particular owner of the vessel, they had so many captains that had, stolen money from them, crashed the boat, done, bad things to them. And then I come in and I have to make up the stagger. And it takes me 6 months for them to realize that I'm just trying to look out for their best interests. And sometimes it doesn't happen because they're so tainted and so guarded and jaded, and I had to, one guy I remember was the moment that, the guy that was the captain before I had gotten deported, couldn't come back on the boat and stuff. And then I showed up and I flew to his office. I showed up the day before and I walked through the boat, and the boat was, they had started about 30, 40 projects unknown to him.
Oh,
I flew to his office in New England, and I went there and he had this big stack of paper and he was real nervous. He's like, well, what do I do? And what about this? And I took the papers out of his hand and I said, hey, I walked through the boat. We're good. And I already had like a 2 to 3 hour conversation with him at breakfast. And he was just such a nice, good-hearted person that I was like, I got to work for this guy, because I got to help him sort this out, because
of course,
he's been taking advantage here, and this is not really good. And people had said nothing but nice things about him. So I said, well, and I took the paper, I put it down, and I said, well, I'll be on the boat 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I'll sort all this out for him. He said, well, where do you know where to start? And I said, I don't, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And he was probably one of the best guys I've ever worked for, just because he was just genuine person. Everything was, and he'd been run through the ringer of all these things that, taken advantage of. But he wasn't tainted, but he was guarded,
Right. But if you would have walked into that exact meeting, without ice in your veins and went in there and got excited and showed upset about everything that was going on, he would have just elevated, that it would have just escalated to a point that it would have been good for nobody.
And I knew that was going to be bad for him, because he was already at that stage where he didn't know where to turn and what to do. And, we had quite a few moments, because it cost a lot more than anticipated, but as it did, to clean up the mess, it was a tough thing, because I had to, first thing is the contractors knew that there's no eyes on the pie, so they were all taking advantage. So it was one of those things where I had to just kind of start shutting everything down, and and they didn't like it. It made a lot of people upset, but I said, well, sorry. They're like, well, the other captain okayed, and I said, well, that's null and void now, and it was I said, I don't care what he signed off, he's not even in the country anymore. So
he's gone, man.
It doesn't matter what he signed. What I need you to do is come up with something else of what you're actually doing here. All you guys need to report to me now. And a lot of them jumped up and down and tried to puff up their chests and stuff. And I usually just wait for them to finish, because they get tired after a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Let them wear out.
Love game, but I do like your book that you just mentioned. I'm definitely going to read that. It's on my list, and I have not read it yet, but I will read it.
One of the key points you have to realize, and this is what I did today. I think it's a clinical study that no two people can be angry at one situation. Like, somebody has to be more angry than the other one. So at that point, he was the aggressor. He was really just chewing on it. And I said, look, hold on. You have to really look at this from my standpoint and how upset I am with the performance of other people. And at that point, he calmed down. And that was a classic, and I must have just pre-programmed that in my mind. But it was funny, a half hour later, I walked out of my office and I thought, Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I remember him going over that. And he's got another segment to that I really need to dive in on, because those negotiating skills can be so applied to professional settings.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, Eddie, it's been really great great talking to you today. It's always a pleasure, my pleasure, for you to be here and taking the time to speak to myself and the audience. And I really appreciate you coming here. How would everyone get a hold of you, try to reach out to you and find you?
Man, it's been great time well spent. Again, thank you so much for everything and having this time here today. But the best way to find me is to type in on Google or any of your search engines, just type in hashtag Eddie Austin BEX. Stands for Be Extraordinary. So EDDIEAUSTIN BEX with a hashtag in front of it, and hit search, and you'll probably find anything you can think about me is on all social media platforms.
Oh, that's great. Be extraordinary. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, Eddie, thank you so much for being here. And that's the Yacht Captain Investor and Eddie Austin. We'll talk to you next time.